What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We are powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. And of course, fresh roasted coffee. Check the show notes below. 20% off your first purchase, BYP20. As always, kind enough to join us is our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. You catch him on BYP with myself and also some show news down the road. Lloyd will be joining me throughout the offseason and the NFL season, as he typically does. NFL draft a couple days away. We continue with our NFC breakdown needs, if you will, offseason moves. NFC North, which I guess you can say was to some extent a compelling division because when it was all said and done, you had three out of the four teams make the playoffs. The only team that didn't make the playoffs, Lloyd, was the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. But Bears faithful believes it could be a different story come later in the week with the draft, and then of course with season number two for Caleb Williams under center. But let's start with the Detroit Lions, a team that a lot of us um, predicted to not only win the division, make a deep run in the playoffs. Defensively, they could not stop Washington in the playoffs, giving up well over 40. So if you're a Lions fan right now, you kind of encapsulate where they're at. Biggest need going forward for the Detroit Lions in your estimation?
Yeah, two very interesting division here because, as you said, three quality teams, and they were all in that top heavy mix of the NFC. And Detroit, we thought was the cream of the crop. They
Yep.
had the bye, and everybody was excited going into the playoffs, but they just were kind of sputtering going into that game. And you and I both said that Washington had a puncher's
Yep.
chance, and they went in there and took it to them. And when you talk about the Lions, the biggest thing is they've lost their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who's now the head coach of Chicago Bears. Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator, goes to the Jets, so they have to make changes there. And it's going to be interesting to see how they retinker this team around. But you definitely have to look in terms of the defense. Their defense allowed 20 points per game. It really didn't matter because their offense put up 564, which is 33.1 points per game, putting up a lot of points, but their defense had trouble stopping people, particularly big plays. So I think they will look defensively in the draft, look for edge, even though they're getting Aiden Hutchinson back from that leg injury, defensive tackle, and then their offensive line, which is one of their strengths. Maybe they go for a backup there.
It's a good point that you brought up about the coaching staff because obviously it's been drained, right? You mentioned defensive tackle. They got about 51.2 million in cap space. I think they go edge. I think they need another playmaker. Cornerbacks, not a bad route to go. Defensively, they just need to figure out to slow teams, right? I mean, that's great that you can score 33, 35, but when you're giving up 38, again, they don't have a ton of pressing needs, but if they can come out of the draft with an edge rusher who can, get the reps and be part of that early rotation, especially when the season starts, then I think they're going to be pretty content with that. You mentioned Johnson, and now I want to get look. We'll get to the Vikings. We'll get to the Packers in a second. I want to get to the Bears because you and I, we have different opinions, if you will, on Caleb Williams. Year two coming up. Year one, not that bad. 20-6, 20 touchdowns, six picks. I think he had 3,000 plus 3,300 yards of passing. You bring back Deontay Swift. He's only 26, 27. The run protection, the run blocking, the run protection, the pass protection is horrible. 68 sacks allowed, which was the third most sacks in NFL history. I mean, I think it's got to start and end with that offensive line, does it not? If you're the Chicago Bears.
Very interesting too, because as you said, they got rid of Matt Eberflus and that whole staff, and they're trying a new regime here, and they're bringing in Ben Johnson. He's an innovator coming over from Detroit, and Ryan Poles, the general manager, who's going to be on the hot
Hmm.
seat. So as you said, this offense just had a lot of difficulty, particularly protecting the quarterback and putting up points. Only scored about 18 points per game, and then defensively they allowed 21.8. So it just showed you the disparity on this team. So they're going about trying to build that toughness that we talked about they were lacking last year. And the key thing is the offensive line, as you were talking about, bringing in Joe Thuney coming over from KC, Drew Dalman coming over from Atlanta at the center position, Jonah Jackson coming over from the Rams. So they're retinkering that offensive line, going to try to fix it. The Bears pick at the 10 spot. So I still think maybe they look at those offensive tackle group, which is pretty strong in this draft. Maybe a Will Campbell coming out of LSU, somebody that kind of slide in there. Also defensively, got to look at edge. I know they have uh, Sweat over there that they brought her from Washington, but
Hmm.
they need to give him some help. And then running back, you just wonder about DeAndre Swift. He just kind of didn't fit in with them. So maybe to give him a thunder and lightning type of guy to help him out. And then, as we were talking about earlier, defensive line overall need to add something there to help stop the run.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that line. They bring in Jackson, right? Thuney from the Rams, defensive line. I mean, it's patchwork in 2024. No player on that unit played more than 70% of the team's defensive snaps. I think they just if they can get the ground game going a little bit. I mean, Swift's still relatively young. I mean, close to 1,000 yard back, and Williams is a quarterback that's going to scramble. He's going to hold on to the ball. He's going to try to run around. I think that contributed to the sacks as well. But if they can't keep him upright, it really doesn't matter what they do in the draft. And as the offseason continues, they're not going to win a lot of games. And the problem is, the pressure rate was just absurd on Caleb Williams. But as we know in the NFL, right? I mean, you're supposed to take that next jump from year one to year number two. They just need to figure out how to get a better, just better grasp of the offensive line. I think the Bears will have a couple opportunities to win some games this coming season. I don't believe they're going to be a playoff team. I still think the Packers and the Vikings will be playoff teams, which leads us into the Packers. And they had about 45, 46 million in cap space. Obviously, they need to go wide receiver first and foremost. I mean, look, they're I don't know if people still look at Jordan Love and say that he is a top 15 quarterback or he's a franchise quarterback, top 10 quarterback. I don't know how people view him, but it seems as though the fan base down in Green Bay, they really like him. I'm talking about the national media, the national narrative. I don't know exactly where I'm at yet with Jordan Love, but I do know this. They showed that when they can run the football and they can open up the passing game, they can score points. And look, I mean, the postseason game, they just kind of hung around, and then the Eagles just flexed their muscle because the Packers were punching up a weight class. So, walk us through biggest needs right now for the Packers, not only with the draft coming up, but obviously as we are in the midst of the offseason.
Sure. And when you talk about the Packers, as you said, Jordan Love's proven he's a starter, but can he be that elite guy? And there's situations in that Eagles game in the playoffs that he just kind of came up short and
Missed
wasn't able to
throws.
drive the field down the field. And they start questioning him. Now, you pointed out wide receiver earlier. Obviously, they have Christian Watson and Dobbs and a bunch of other guys that are kind of number two. So, yeah, I think maybe eventually they need to get somebody in there to help push those guys. Maybe one of them jump out, be elite, but defensively, they're definitely going to have to clean some things up. Uh, they allowed their defense actually wasn't that bad, allowing about 20 points per game. Offense had about 27 that they were scoring per game. Um, so we'll see how they do, but it's going to be interesting because they've changed that offensive line a little bit around. They're moving Elgin Jacobs, pretty good guard. They're moving him to center. They brought in Aaron Banks coming over from San Francisco to that guard position, so they'll slide him in there. Nate Hobbs at corner, they have him coming in, but I still think corner, offensive line, maybe edge, defensive tackle are areas that they're going to look at. Now, obviously, at 23, they're going to have to see what kind of slides to them. And Brian Gutekunst does a nice job in the draft because they're a team that just is not usually pretty active in free agency. So I expect the Packers to still be in the mix with Matt LaFleur and not a lot of glaring needs, but they'll just try to fix this roster and kind of make it more elite. Because as you said, they kind of struggled against the Lions. They just kind of were not in their weight. And let's not forget the Vikings are in this division as well.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's just their receivers. When you look at the position players, I mean, you're talking about, again, you had a nice, 2023, 2024 deep room. Okay, fine. But then it finishes in the top 31 at the position in receptions, which again, their offensive line. was one of the best in pro football. I mean, you mentioned a little bit on Jordan Love, but if you look at his numbers, I mean, we're so enamored with the passing stats and the yards and the touchdowns and the picks and the quarterback rating. He was only sacked 14 times. So, and you mentioned that playoff game. See, the thing with Jordan Love is, he'll miss throws. That's what concerns me. The reads and the throws. But again, I still think they'll be on the cusp of being a playoff team, and it leads us to the Minnesota Vikings, who really played well. And the catalyst, obviously, was Sam Darnold. Got the bank, slinging Sammy. Now it's Seattle. Now it's J.J. McCarthy's turn, coming off that injury from Minnesota. I think they're in a very interesting spot, and they have right around 62.9 million in cap space. So you lose J.J. McCarthy. What was it in August? And a lot of people thought lost season, but boom, you go 14-3. Darnold, massive part of it. Cashes in. Obviously, this kid coming off an injury, offensive line's always going to be a point of contention. I think you might have to look deep in the draft for running back. I think you got to go corner, maybe tackle again. So, how about as we close out this division, thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings?
Vikings are going to be interesting because everybody I talk to says JJ McCarthy is not ahead of schedule, but he's right on time to be
Hmm.
ready for training camp with that ACL. And that was one of the reasons they did not want to give Darnold that large amount of money. They let Seattle do it. Now they are going to have to protect him. They're getting back Darby. They're great offensive linemen. Their left tackle. He had that bad injury. He's going to be back for them. They did lose David Queensberry on offensive line. At corner is going to be interesting too. I think this may be an area they also look at. Stephon Gilmore, free agent, Shaq Griffin, another guy who was there. They're going to have to look at that. But yeah, at 24, another team who's okay. Let's see what kind of falls to us. They're bringing their whole brain trust back, including their head coach O'Connell, and then this defense coordinator Brian Flores did such a great job with this unit. So they're going to give them some pieces to work with. I think offensive line, particularly guard, defensive tackles, safety because Smith's getting a little old, and then possibly corner. So they're type of areas. They may just be one of those teams to say, okay, what kind of falls to them, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, you look at the division, obviously, because 3 out of 4 made the playoffs. The Bears are still going to pick in the top five. They didn't make the playoffs. A lot of people think they might make a move for Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State, with the number 4 overall draft pick. All right, as we close it out, win totals now. This is a very early look. So you look at the Detroit Lions projected is probably around 11 or so, but Vegas will have them as 10 and a half. Do you believe they will go over again? They've gone over their win totals in 3 consecutive seasons. The first time they've done it since 93, 95. 15-2 last year. Their best record was 12-4 back in 1991 when they made it all the way to the NFC Championship against the then Washington Redskins. So when you look at the Bears, I'm sorry, when you look at the Lions, pardon me, Lloyd, right now, 10 and a half. Do they have the talent? Do you believe they will win over 10 games or they will win under 10 games?
To tell you when cute because I probably put them right around 11. You know what I mean? So I said they go barely over, but they're not going to be the star power team that they were last year. They're not sneaking up on anybody. And you start wondering, is that window kind of closing a little bit? Dan Campbell, his message, is it the same as before? Jared Goff kind of showed some of his weaknesses in terms of late season turnovers. But yeah, I think 11 wins is right around where this team is going to be. They're definitely not going to be the juggernaut that they were last year.
Green Bay went 11-6. Their odds Super Bowl 18-1. Right now they're sitting at 9.5. People project right around 9. They've gone over their win total 5 of the last 6 seasons. The only other came in 2022. They had 9 wins with a projected win total of 11. So do you see them over under 9 wins?
Green Bay Packers, yeah, I could definitely see them over 9 wins. I think that number's a little low for them. They just have with LaFleur, they seem to win, 12 plus games every year, kind of automatically. They have the running back, they have their quarterback, as we said, in place. Their defense is solid. So, yeah, I think they'll get over that number.
I'm going to hammer the under right now on the Bears. I don't think they're going to win many games. So their record last year was 5-12. People were projecting, the books projecting right around 8, point 0.4. So you figure 8.5. Second straight year, their win total projection of 8.5. It's highest since 2019, which was 9. They went under the win total last season, finishing 5-12. They haven't won 9 games since 2018, and that's when they were 12-4. If they don't fix that line, I can see them winning 3 or 4. I like the under right now.
Q, I'd have to agree with you. I think they're going to be better, possibly get to, seven type wins and start building some things that are in their new head coach. But there's still a lot of pieces that they need to fix from last year. We talked about that offensive line and their defense still has some age at some positions. So I think, yeah, I'll go the under there.
And then lastly, the Minnesota Vikings. They won 14 games last season, which basically they ripped through their win total projection of 6.5. They finished 500 or better in 7 of the last 10 seasons. Now, here's the bookmark point: have a 100 point differential last season, but they're going to have a new quarterback under center. So this gets a little dicey, right? So again, saying an 8.5. I'm inclined to say they take a step back with this kid. He's coming off a major injury. It'll take at least 2 years for him to be fully 100%. So at 8.5, I'm actually going to hammer the under. I don't see this team winning more than 8 games.
I'll tend to agree with you too, because last year was such a magic carpet ride for them, 14-3 and came out of nowhere with a quarterback nobody expected to get done. JJ McCarthy, as you said, that injury. We have to see uh, how he's able to move in training camp, et cetera, because that was a very bad knee injury and a lot of career seasons last year for those guys. Obviously, they still have Jefferson and some pieces on their defense, but I would agree with you that I'd go under there.
All right, so we've hit every division in the NFC East. I'm sorry, in the NFC except the NFC South, which a lot of people think is kind of a nasty looking division. The team that came out on top among the muck was Tampa Bay, finishing 10-7 to three other participants: Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans. Carolina and New Orleans had really down seasons. I think people think Carolina might be on the rise, if you will. Both those teams went 5-12. So as we continue with this edition on BYP, let's start with the Tampa Bay Bucs. As I mentioned, 10-7. And listen, we know this team has weapons and we know this team can score. So if we're talking about what's their biggest need right now as a Bucs fan who might be tuning in, what is Tampa Bay's biggest need?
Yeah, Q, as you were saying, they scored 502 points last season, 29 and a half per game, a lot of points.
Wow.
But they did allow 22.6. So they were in a lot of shootouts. Baker Mayfield driving the football down the field to Mike Evans and a lot of these other weapons on his team. They do have Chris Godwin coming back from his leg injury. Um, Interesting team because, as you know, Canales left and they
Yep.
kind of were like, okay, where are we going to move? But then Liam Cohen stepped in. Now he's Jacksonville's head coach. So they have to replace him. I still think, as we were talking about their defense, Ty Bowles, it's interesting. And it greeted blitzing, but overall, in terms of stopping the opponent, a lot of work to do on this defense. So I think they're going to go with an edge rusher, possibly a cornerback, maybe an inside linebacker for them to kind of shore up that defense because, Joe Tryon Schwenka, a guy they drafted first round a couple years ago, just has not lived up to expectations. They have some age at linebacker. So I think these are the areas going to look at. But overall, good exciting team, and they won a division again. So you talked about how down the South has kind of been, and I think the Bucs are still going to be in the mix in this division.
So two teams that are going to be 1-2 when it comes to the draft order coming out of this division. The two teams that played the worst, Carolina and New Orleans. Right now, as it stands, Carolina will get the eighth pick. The New Orleans Saints will have the ninth pick. A lot of people think Carolina has to go defense. There's a couple names out there. The kid Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, the kid Green from Marshall, the edge rusher. Um, you know, we can talk about the offense in a moment, but let's talk about the defensive side of the ball for the Carolina Panthers. I still believe that they're going to have to add some weapons for Bryce Young, but defensively, Is that kind of where you're thinking this team goes out and they try to get a guy that can, instinctively get to the quarterback? I mean, they had two players that had just 5 sacks, and one of them's Jadeveon Clowney, who's getting really up there in age, so they need to go young.
It's going to be interesting, Q, because as you said, they need a lot. So I'm hearing from a lot of people, Carolina may be interested in trading this pick and getting a lot of picks down the line to kind of help this roster. It's kind of depleted, but I definitely agree with you in terms of this defense. Their defense allowed a whopping 534 points, which was 31.4 points per game. They weren't stopping anybody, but did bring back Eva Rowe, their defense coordinator. I don't know why, but maybe him and Alice have a relationship there, and they're trying to fix it. They did bring in Bobby Brown, a nose tackle from the Rams, Treshawn Wharton, a defensive end from Kansas City. So they're trying to bring some pieces in to help that defense, but they need more, particularly an edge rusher, as you said, Burns. They traded him to the Giants, and they've never really kind of replaced him. Also, safety, cornerback, and linebacker. So at every level of this defense, they're going to probably try to bring in some players, probably about 5 players or so. They have 9 picks in the draft, so they have a lot of picks already. And as I said earlier, they may be interested in getting some more.
Then you have the New Orleans Saints. I mean, look, they need a quarterback. I mean, Derek Carr, you talk about this injury right now. I mean, is the plan in place where if, I mean, look, if Sanders drops, he can be right there. I mean, if you think about it, if if it just plays out, and let's just say Sanders doesn't go 1, 2, or 3, the Bears aren't going to grab Sanders. Jacksonville's not. The Raiders aren't. The Jets have Justin Fields. I mean, I don't think the Jets would draft Sanders, but who knows? They're the Jets. Carolina has Bryce Young. I mean, they've got veterans. Are they going to give up on Young already? And then you have number 9 right there, the New Orleans Saints. I mean, I think the biggest question mark right now, again, because their plans, again, uh, you just don't know. I mean, you got this car injury right now. It's not the best outlook for him. He's getting up there. So, I mean, where do they go in the draft and what are their biggest needs?
And we'll jump back to the Panthers real quick. Yeah, they do believe in Bryce Young. He played very well at the end of the
Yep.
season. Canals, that's their guy. So um, I think the Saints, Q, they do need a new quarterback because everybody I talked to, that shoulder injury is extreme for Derek Carr. He may not even play this season. He may have to get some kind of reconstructive surgery on that shoulder. And then you kind of say, okay, where do they go from there? Obviously, another team who's kind of changing the whole franchise, ripping it down from the bottom. They got rid of Dennis Allen and his whole staff. They're bringing in Kelly Moore, trying to bring in that Eagles mentality and try to bring some winning ways here. Mickey Loomis, longtime GM here. He's got to get it done in this draft. So we talk about quarterback, edge rusher. They need some more help there because they're getting a lot older with Cam Jordan there, and you wonder how much he has left in the tank. Offensive line, they lost Ramczyk. He just retired in the past couple of weeks. And cornerback, they traded Lattimore. So a lot of moving pieces for the Saints. Saints are at number 9, so you're in the top 10. They'll kind of see what they can get now. The interesting thing is if Shador Sanders drops to them there, or if Dart's there from Ole Miss, what do they do? I'm not just very high on his quarterback class, so
No.
you know what I mean. So, if I were the Saints, I wouldn't reach. I kind of see what the best player available would be. They are just trying to change some things around, but I think it's going to be another tough one for them because they allowed a ton of points as well each game, 23.4 points per game. They weren't stopping anybody, and that's why they finally got rid of Dennis Allen. So a lot of moving pieces here, but I do expect them probably to go edge rusher. Shamar Stewart, watch for him out of Texas A&M, possibly Michael Williams coming out of Georgia. So there are a couple names to throw out there. I just don't see them getting a quarterback there, though. I think they're going to wait to get their quarterback.
Interesting. You look at 3 of the 4 teams in this division, and 3 of the 4 draft in the top 15. The Falcons are a boatload of issues right now. I mean, again, I think that's a team that's got to go defense. Penix Jr., he's going to be the quarterback going forward. I have no idea. I mean, there's reports being floated out there that the Falcons might try to trade Kirk Cousins back to Minnesota. Seattle's looking to move Sam Howell. So, there's if you're talking about a team that might need a quarterback, as a lifeline. I know we just talked a little bit about the Saints. Maybe they look at Seattle and Howell. I don't know, but getting back to the Falcons to close it out, the question is, what are you going to do? I, it just for the life of me, we killed that team when they drafted Michael Penix Jr. And they obviously, whether they got the right quarterback or not, they knew that they needed a quarterback. And now you have all this buzz around Kirk Cousins to trade deadline, or to trade reports, trade rumors. Here we go. All these NFL insiders are kind of like, stoking the fire. Cousins back to Minnesota. That contract is ridiculous. I mean, think about it. You're basically the Falcons are asking trade partners to pay 20 million of the 45 million in guaranteed money left on his contract. I mean, there's no who's going to do that, first of all.
No one can. Everybody's saying, yeah, the Steelers they need a quarterback, and the Vikings, as you said, may take a look at them. The Browns, I'm hearing it mix, but Q did they can't trade for that contract. I think it's 4 years, about $180 million over his 4 years, and you always got to question what were they doing signing him to that large amount of money for so many years, and then they draft Penix Jr. They should have just waited. And now they're stuck with they're probably going to have the highest paid backup ever, because they can't cut them unless they're going to have humongous dead cap money over the next 2 seasons. So a lot of moving pieces with this inconsistent Falcons team. 8-9 last year. Another one, their defense allowed 423, which is about 20, almost 24, 25 points per game. So they have to fix that defense. They brought in Jeff Ulbrich, the former defensive coordinator for the Jets, and he's going to try to shore up at that position. But I expect them to go edge rusher, defensive tackle in this one, and they just lost their center, so maybe they'll go there as well.
All right, let me get the win totals, and you tell me where you're sitting on these guys. Because I don't think there's very good football in that division, but we will see what your thoughts are. I mean, I can't foresee for the life of me Carolina, the Saints, and/or Atlanta having win totals that are over 7 or 8. But that's just me. All right, so let's see here. What do we got here? Again, it's a Monday edition of BYP. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us. All right, the Falcons. 7.5. They've gone under their win total in 6 of the last seasons, covering only in 2022. 7 wins on a projected 4.5 total. Their last winning season came in 2017. They were 10-7. 7.5. I mean, I'm sorry. I think this kid's going to struggle. Penix Jr. I just don't like the makeup of this team, to be quite honest. I would lean towards the under here.
Well, Q, last year they're 8-9.
I
So
know,
I,
smoke
I
and
I think
mirrors.
they're going to be worse to work off of that record. And this is another team. Raheem Morris. They had that nice season, and then last year they kind of come back down to earth, and they allowed so many points. At defense, which is supposed to be his specialty, is just not stopping anybody. I do agree with you that they'll probably have the under in this one, and you know. They have all the pieces for fantasy football, but it just doesn't seem to work for them.
Carolina 6.5. If you played them last year and you played the over 4.5, you were happy with that 12-5 campaign. They've gone under its win total in 5 of their last 7 seasons. Won 7 on a 6.5 play total in 2022. They haven't finished above 500 since 2017, and they went 11-5. Over under 6.5 wins.
Oh man, last year Q 5-12. I'll go with 6 on a push or 7. They're a young team. I think Bryce Young is starting to kind of get it. Canales is really coaching them up, and just kind of a no-name defense. But I think Carolina can get it done. They'll be probably right around that 6-point total. But they have to fix that defense. So going to be an interesting team. But as we said, typically only one team's going to make the playoffs out of this wonderful division.
That's in a wonderful division. I don't believe it's going to be the Saints, who finished 5-12. Their win total sits at 5.5. Second straight sub 500 win total for New Orleans. 7 wins, one loss, one push since 2016. They've gone under their win total in three straight seasons after going 4-0-1 the previous five. They have finished over 500 in six of their last eight seasons, but just one of the last three. I think they're going to struggle mightily coming up this season. Again, that is a team where I will play the under.
Yeah, I definitely would play the under with them. It was always a running joke. Oh, they're gonna finish 8-8 all the time, all those seasons with Drew Brees right around that mark. And another team where they've torn it all down, and Kellen Moore's got a lot to clean up here. And you talk about all the ambiguity with Carr and that shoulder injury, and the age on the defense. So I'll say, yeah, I'll go with the under there. And as crazy as it may sound, it may be Tampa Bay winning this division again. So it's going to be fun to see Ken Baker continue this resurgence for them.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay, as we close it out with this, again, 10-7. They won 10 games last season. They've gone over a twin total in five of their last six seasons. Those are good trending numbers. Their win total sits at 9.5. They put together back-to-back winning seasons for the second time in their last 16 seasons. They did that 2020, 2021 with Tom Brady. Projection with the total has increased from 7.5 to 2024 to 9.5. Now, you might sit there and say it's a big jump, but as you alluded to, they won 10 games. I just think it's a product of a bad division. They'll find a way to win six or seven, in a division, or I should say six or so. They can sweep that division. They'll win a game here and there they have no business winning. And then they'll win, outside of the division and the conference. So, point being, I like them to win 10 games plus next season.
Do I have to agree with you because you look at the rest of the division, it's not very good. And Baker Mayfield, I know I killed him for so many years, but this guy has really become a veteran leader. Not saying he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's putting up some big time stats, and the team believes in him. You're getting Chris Godwin back from injury. They didn't lose a lot in terms of players, you know, losing Liam Cohen, that's a question mark there. But I do believe that Jason Licht, their general manager, is going to do a nice job. I'll go with Tampa Bay winning 11 to just beat that number.
All right, so we close out the NFC. Later on in the week, we're going to rip through the AFC. We'll do a top 10 draft preview as well. Later in the week, the draft is coming up on Thursday. I feel as though the Super Bowl just ended. I mean, that's, and we'll do a little sprinkling of the news and notes around the league too later this week. But as always, give Lloyd a follow at Lloyd Vance on social media. Does his Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on his YouTube channel. You can follow me at Rich Q on Q, YouTube channel Rich Quinones. And we're always powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Fresh roasted coffee, 20% off. BYP20, your first purchase. Check us out on Buzzsprout, Amazon Music, and Spotify as well. We will do it again. Mignana, always appreciate a couple moments, my friend. Great stuff.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.